Adidas Power Soccer 98 would be the fourth and final entry in the popular football series by Psygnosis that would actually get a release on the PlayStation in 1998 itself. And the game, like the previous titles in the series, offers up a classic mix of arcade and simulated gameplay that was also seen in the previous games. And this game provides the addition and updates of different types of tournaments and cups to play for, with 11 different international leagues and access to 120 national teams with 30 different types of stadiums to play in. The game would also try to improve on many of the gameplay aesthetics and mechanics with different types of flicks and passes and various tackles that you can use in order to win the ball back and to try and gain an advantage in the game. While this also is the final entry in the series, it also didn't receive great reviews. It received very unfavourable reviews from magazines regarding many of its clunky controls and systems, considering it to be outdated, as the game had been outsourced and created by a different development company. So it led that even with the addition of Adidas Power Soccer 2 that was released previous to it, there were a lot of changes. And really, when you think about it, the original Adidas Power Soccer game was released way back in early of 1996. And during that time, up until the edition of 98, there was 2 other games in between. So in the space of a 2-year period, or just over 2 years, there was 4 games developed and pretty much published in that time. Even though the game didn't get the best of reviews, it does have some nice features, but for some reason the gameplay and the pace, even though it still uses various fast-paced nature and aesthetics to that of the original games, it doesn't seem to play the same way as the other games. It seems a bit more clunky and sluggish. That's probably the reason why it didn't get the best of reviews. It's not to say that it's generally a bad game, it's just the methods and the control systems that were prevalent in the previous games aren't as fluent in this game, and with the control systems that are there, very like what happened with the actual soccer series, the methods used were considered probably outdated at that time, because you had the likes of FIFA 98 and you also had ISS Pro 98 on the horizon. And the truth is, because FIFA 98 Road to World Cup literally changed the way that we see soccer games, because it was so revolutionary in terms of what it did, because it used motion capture technology for the movement of the players. The passing, the shooting, the cross, and everything about the game was very fluent and dynamic, and it felt very lifelike for its time. It was actually way ahead of its time. And the same with ISS Pro, even like the standard ISS Pro and then ISS Pro 98. Again, it took everything to a whole new level. Whereas with the likes of Adidas Power Soccer 98, in all honesty, even though it's not a bad soccer title, it just can't compare to those games, because it doesn't have all of those aesthetics and realistic takes on what it's trying to do. It just isn't as well fleshed out compared to those 2 iconic titles. And for that reason alone, because the game, more than likely because of the reviews that it got, it would have been heavily compared to more so FIFA 98, because literally FIFA 98 set the standard for football games across the board, as that alongside of the ISS series became the 2 dominant brands within football games within the sports genre on consoles at the time. So literally anything else that was to show its face, or to even for previous or even current series, had to really up their game in order to compete at that level. And unfortunately, many of these series, although they were good in their own right during the early days of the PlayStation, just could not compete with those 2 iconic series. So it obviously left the decision with the developers and the companies to stop any future entries and to literally stop the franchise together, because they probably knew themselves that there was no way that they could compete, that they were better to use their time and energy elsewhere or to work on other projects. Because when you do have dominant forces with various projects, it really is for developers very hard to compete with, because it doesn't matter what you do unless you have the tools available to you or the resources, which in this case the likes of EA and Konami would have had with their development studios. They would have had massive amounts of developers and project workers in order they're available to help them create those games. So unless teams have that, it'd be very, very difficult to really stand out. But that doesn't take away from the nostalgic element of a lot of these soccer games, because again, even though they may not be as fleshed out or even as popular, maybe not even as good in some cases, but they do have something unique to offer, because even with all of those popular games, each of these soccer games seen on the PlayStation all did help to influence the sports genre moving forward in some way, because even with this game as well, it still utilised the elements of promoting the Adidas brand with various kind of like TV adverts that would play throughout the game, even like at half time or at different intervals. So it still had that dynamic and aesthetic, so that was one thing that it did do really well. And you can definitely see that with the likes of later soccer games. It seemed to be that they took many elements of a lot of these type of ideas and managed to incorporate them into future games. But like I always say, I do genuinely think that a lot of these games do hold a place in history for a good reason, because a lot of the soccer games that were created back then helped to pave the way and build the foundation for games that we do play today, and had they not existed, the games that we do play now would have been very different. But that's just my honest opinion, but I do believe that that is the realism behind it. But either way, Adidas Power Soccer 98 holds its place in history as a nostalgic element. While not considered to be the best soccer game on the PlayStation, it does hold its own in terms of the series legacy that it had on the console, and in a lot of ways the series itself is still worthwhile going back and revisiting just for the nostalgic element alone, and just to see what early games played like and felt like from a nostalgic standpoint. So for that reason alone, it is worthwhile trying out. And I would love to know your thoughts on Adidas Power Soccer 98 for the PlayStation. Did you play it back in the day, and if so, what did you think of the game overall? I'd love to hear whatever stories you have of the game, so be sure to share them down in the comments below. And if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to be updated of future videos. And if you would like to see content around other types of soccer games also released on the PS1, you can check out the playlist here on the screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.
Well anticipated by the keeper. As role models, players must be aware of the implications of their behaviour, both on and off the pitch. The match ends. The crowd are on their feet, applauding both sides off the pitch.